Sometimes betrayal is right before your eyes, but your heart doesn't want to believe what your eyes see. I'm Alice Calderon. I was born in one of those old port cities close to the coast in northern South America. It's a city where the ocean's salt mixes with the scent of orange groves and decaying secrets all at once. My grandfather, Robert Calderon, he's 75, a wisdom slowly fading under the shadow of Alzheimer's. Yet his name still carries weight in this city. He was the head of the Calderon family, the architect of our fortune, and a refuge for us. But no refuge can protect you if it starts to rot from within. As I did every week, I visited my grandfather that day. He opened the door, smiled, but his eyes didn't recognize me. "Is that Sophia?" he asked. "No, Grandpa, it's Alice." A strained smile on my face. When I stepped inside, documents were scattered in the middle of the living room. Bank envelopes, notary papers, a few signed documents. My eyes involuntarily fixated on a date on one paper. An instinct. My grandfather had been in the hospital that day. How could he have been both at the hospital and at the bank branch on the same day? This thought settled in my mind, but I didn't act on it. That night, I shared the situation with my mother, Sophia. She listened with a weary, "Paperwork again?" look. "Alice, your father is getting old. Maybe you think he's forgotten. Let's talk to the bank." But I wasn't at ease. This didn't look like forgetfulness. This gave the impression of being planned. No one in the family even mentioned Cain's name. Everything was limited to just a few documents, a few dates. We couldn't accuse someone without unraveling the knot. Within a few days, we started a small investigation. First, internally.
My mother reviewed my grandfather's phone records. More calls with the bank than usual. Strange. We checked the dates my cousin Cain stayed at my grandfather's house. They matched. Too many matches. Cain, always the shining star in the family. Educated abroad, got into crypto business. He was the voice of the digital future to us. Intelligent, articulate, kind. And now, could he be someone quietly trying to transfer everything into his name? We didn't even dare to ask ourselves that question. My mother reached out to my grandfather's former secretary. The secretary said, "Many documents were brought in over the past few months. Mr. Robert would sign them without reading anymore. Especially documents brought by Cain. Small pieces began to come together, but it was still just suspicion, not evidence. At the end of this process, the unease within us was closer to the truth, and that's when my mother, I, and our lawyer Jasmine decided to take official steps. When Jasmine examined the documents, she remained silent. She took off her glasses, closed the file. "Alice, these documents, everything about them except the signature, looks like a setup." It was at that moment that something broke inside me. This was no longer a mistake. It was the sting of betrayal. But we still weren't sure, because the name of the person standing before us was Cain, and we were family. Sometimes family embraces you, and sometimes it silently pushes you from behind. Initiating the official process wasn't just about going public. It was also about turning to the family and saying, one of us might have committed this betrayal. That burden was heavier than any document. Our lawyer Jasmine discovered in her initial review that many of the documents contradicted their signing dates. But what was interesting was this: the documents seemed rushed. Some repeated the same sentences, others referred to meetings that never happened. This level of amateurism was the kind of mistake someone trying not to draw attention would make. When Jasmine said, "There's someone else involved," we all started considering possibilities other than Cain. Because our hearts still weren't ready to accuse him. My grandfather's bank records showed a significant portion of his assets transferred to a fund for the security of future generations. But the person managing this fund, appeared as Alex Calderon on the forged documents. There was no one in our family with that name. My father, Marcos, said, maybe it's an external consultant or a security name used by the bank, but that explanation felt weak to all of us. At this point, Jasmine submitted a written request to the bank, demanding identification documents and signature samples for all these transactions. The waiting was agonizing. Meanwhile, the family dynamics had started to unravel. Silence grew at dinner tables, and eye contact was avoided. Cain, as usual, acted casually, continuing to joke, "I'm expecting a big inheritance from Grandpa."
And then the bank documents arrived. In the account opened under the name Alex Calderon, the dates of transfers made using my grandfather's signature coincided with the days Robert was in the hospital. That's when everything started to unravel, like a loose thread. Jasmine said, this account was most likely opened by someone using a fake identity, but even worse, a bank employee might have turned a blind eye to it. Sophia remained silent. In that moment, I saw the family ideal she had built in her inner world for years cracking apart. For me, it was decision time. Either we stopped here and turned back, or we pushed forward and shook things up. My mother told me that night,
I don't even want to mention Cain's name. But if these trails lead there, we can't ignore it.
This was a turning point for us. To proceed legally, we needed more concrete, more technical evidence. Written documents had been manipulated, signatures copied, dates altered. Jasmine said, if we can capture the digital footprints, this case is over. That night, for the first time in my life, I decided to look for a hacker. Because sometimes justice is hidden in a line outside of law books. I was sure Cain had left a digital trail. Crypto exchanges, anonymous wallets, correspondences, all of it had to be somewhere accessible to someone. But who? I first heard the name Dante in a message from an old friend from university. If you can't solve it legally, reach out to Dante, it read. When I received that message, I was still hesitant, but the fear in my mother's eyes, my grandfather's vacant stare, and Cain's fake smile, they solidified my decision. Sometimes, staying silent is also a betrayal. The truth is often hidden in the shadows, and sometimes stepping into those shadows means befriending the darkness. Dante? When I first heard the name, it sounded like a myth, half legend, half threat. But as I researched him, fear gave way to curiosity. No one knew his identity. No one had seen his face. But in the digital world, he was either behind or right at the heart of every shadowy operation that left a trace. Contacting him wasn't as difficult as I thought. My old friend directed me to a forum. All I had to do was write a single line. Is one line of code enough for justice? 3 hours later, my screen went dark. Then a window opened, a black background with a single sentence in green letters. Just be sure you asked the right person. Dante. That's when everything began. Our communications were only in writing. No voice, no image. Just cold, sharp sentences. Dante asked for information from me. Documents, bank transactions, Robert's hospital records, screenshots of the account opened under the name Alex Calderon, and most importantly, the IP data of the devices Cain used. Gathering all the data took me days. During that process, Cain was still relaxed, still carefree. He even told me, "You should take a vacation. All this stress isn't good for you." And the only thing I wanted to do was shut him up. But I smiled, because now I had a weapon in my hand. Silence. Dante was silent for a few days. Then he wrote, "This kid not only had access to money, but also a lot of technology. But he wasn't careful. No digital crime trail can ever be completely erased. It only becomes harder to track." The next day, Dante sent me email correspondences Cain had with a crypto exchange. The encrypted emails had been decrypted, and in those emails, money transfers to accounts opened with fake IDs were clearly visible. But the most striking thing was an audio file, a call recording of Cain with someone.
The voice was clear.
Tricking Grandpa wasn't hard. The old man doesn't even remember what he signs anymore. Things get easy when money changes hands.
I was shaken. This was unacceptable, not just to a grandfather, but to any human being. That night, I spoke with my mother. I played it for her. She didn't speak for a long time. She just wiped away her tears and said,
As a mother, I can give birth to a child, but it turns out I can't give birth to a character.
We relayed everything to Jasmine too. Even she shook her head in astonishment.
This isn't just fraud. This falls into the category of organized crime. Moreover, with elder abuse, fake identity, and digital crimes combined, things will get serious for Cain.
But Dante didn't stop. For him, the end point was the truth. He collected all the traces, health records indicating that Robert's medication dosage had been altered, log records showing that household security cameras were turned off on certain days. The truth? Sometimes it's so harsh that just seeing it demolishes all of one's defenses, but ignoring it is a deeper betrayal. We paused everything for a day before going to the prosecutor's office. My mother, Jasmine, and we silently drank our coffees that morning. We hadn't confronted Cain directly yet, but everyone knew the truth. The fact that Cain had deceived us so easily showed how unprepared we were. But there was something worse. Our failure to even consider this betrayal, to never even place him among those possibilities. My grandfather Robert was doing well that day. He was out in the garden. He was sitting, watching the caretaker water the flowers. I went to his side, my heart aching. I didn't say anything to him at first. I just sat. Yet storms raged in my mind. How will I tell him? His grandson stole his fortune, with his own signature no less. But the words caught in my throat. My grandfather turned to me and looked at my face. It was as if he knew everything. But the shadow of his illness left the expression on his face incomplete. Still, he held my hands and said, "You are strong, Alice. You will keep our family standing." It was in that moment that I made a decision. Instead of telling him the truth, I chose to bear the burden of the truth myself. His mind couldn't handle this chaos, but I had to. That night, my mother locked herself in her room. She had taken out old albums. I saw her silently weeping while looking at Cain's childhood photos. My mother was crying, not for her son, but perhaps for the signs she had ignored for years. The next morning, Jasmine and I went to the prosecutor's office. The documents Dante found, the deep fake analyses, the crypto transfer statements, the forged power of attorney documents, all were part of a systematic plan. The prosecutor looked at the file for only a few seconds before saying, "This isn't just elder abuse, it's organized fraud. We're initiating proceedings immediately." The arrest warrant was issued quickly, and one morning, at 10 minutes to 6, Cain's house was surrounded by police. I didn't see those moments firsthand, but I watched Cain being led out of the building in handcuffs on the news. There was no anger in his eyes, just surprise. I lost my faith in our family that day, more than I ever believed in him. A betrayal isn't limited to the crime of one person. Everyone who ignores it, everyone who feels it but stays silent, shares in it. My mother said only one sentence to me on the way back from the prosecutor's office. "Our job is to fix the damage. Whatever we left undone, it's time to make amends now." We didn't tell my grandfather anything. We just visited him as before, drank tea together, and listened to old stories. But now, with every visit, I looked at my grandfather with different eyes. The lines on his face told me how precious trust was. I decided never to easily surrender that trust to anyone again.